The gunshot echoed across the open plains, sending a flock of starlings spiraling into the cloudless Montana sky. Eliza Kincaid ducked instinctively, her worn leather boots sliding in the mud as she scrambled toward the only shelter in sight, a weathered stable at the edge of a property she didn't recognize. The year was 1875, and she had been running for 3 days straight, ever since her stagecoach had been ambushed by Raleigh's gang outside of Billings. Blood trickled down her arm where a bullet had grazed her, but Eliza had no time to tend to it. She pushed through the stable doors, closing them quickly behind her. The interior was dim, smelling of hay and horse, a comforting scent that reminded her of happier days at her father's ranch before everything had fallen apart. Now, at 22, she found herself alone, hunted and far from anything resembling home. She pressed herself against the rough wooden wall, willing her racing heart to slow. A soft nickering from one of the stalls made her freeze. She wasn't alone. Slowly, her eyes adjusted to the darkness, and she could make out 5 horses in their stalls. One of them, a magnificent palomino, watched her with intelligent eyes. "You'll be safe here, girl," came a deep voice from outside. Eliza's breath caught in her throat. She slid down to a crouching position, moving deeper into the shadows between 2 empty stalls. The stable doors creaked open, allowing a slice of sunlight to cut across the hay-strewn floor. A tall figure led a chestnut mare inside. The man didn't notice her at first. He was focused on the horse, speaking to it in low, soothing tones. He moved with the easy confidence of someone who had spent his life around animals. His broad shoulders were encased in a worn leather vest over a faded blue shirt, and a weathered Stetson was pulled low over his eyes. "There you go, Penny," he murmured, leading the mare to an empty stall. "Had yourself quite the adventure today, didn't you?" Eliza watched as he removed the saddle with practiced movements. She needed to escape before he discovered her, but her limbs felt like lead, and her head was spinning from exhaustion and hunger. When she tried to shift her weight, a small gasp escaped her lips as pain shot through her injured arm. The cowboy's head snapped up, his hand moving to the pistol at his hip. "Who's there?" he called out, his voice sharp with wariness. Eliza remained frozen, scarcely breathing. "I know someone's in here," he continued, slowly moving toward her hiding spot. "Come on out now, nice and easy." When she didn't respond, he drew his gun. "Last warning, show yourself." With no choice left, Eliza stumbled to her feet, nearly collapsing as she did so. The cowboy's eyes widened in surprise as he took in her appearance, the torn dress, the dried blood on her sleeve, the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. "Please," she whispered, her voice hoarse from disuse. It was the first word she had spoken since the attack. "Please don't turn me in." The cowboy holstered his gun immediately. "Madam, you're hurt." He stepped forward, then stopped when he saw her flinch. "I'm Nathan Novak. This is my ranch. I'm not going to harm you." Eliza swayed on her feet, and Nathan moved quickly to catch her before she hit the ground. The last thing she saw before darkness claimed her was a pair of concerned green eyes. When Eliza awoke, she was lying on a soft bed in a sparsely furnished but clean room. Sunlight streamed through muslin curtains, and the smell of coffee and bacon made her stomach growl. She tried to sit up but fell back with a groan as pain lanced through her arm. "Whoa there," came a familiar voice. "Take it easy." Nathan Novak stood in the doorway, holding a tray with food and what appeared to be medical supplies. Without his hat, she could see his face clearly, strong jawline, those same green eyes that had been her last sight before fainting, and dark hair that curled slightly at the nape of his neck. "You've been out for nearly a day," he said, setting the tray on a small table beside the bed. "That's quite a wound you've got. I cleaned it as best I could, but it needs proper tending." Eliza remained silent, her eyes darting around the room, looking for escape routes. "You're safe here," Nathan said, seemingly reading her thoughts. "Whatever trouble you're in, it won't find you at the North Star Ranch. We're pretty isolated." When she still didn't speak, he sighed and poured a cup of coffee, adding a generous spoonful of sugar. "Here, this might help." Eliza accepted the cup with trembling hands, the warmth seeping into her cold fingers. The first sip was heaven rich and sweet and exactly what she needed. She took another, then another. "Thank you," she finally whispered. Nathan's face broke into a relieved smile. "She speaks." He pulled a chair closer to the bed. "Now, Miss Eliza," she offered cautiously. "Eliza Kincaid. Miss Kincaid, care to tell me why you were hiding in my stable with a bullet wound?" Eliza stared into her coffee cup. "I was on the stagecoach to Helena." "We were attacked by Raleigh's gang 3 days ago." Her voice grew faint. "They killed everyone else. I only escaped because I was thrown from the coach when the horses bolted. I've been running ever since." Nathan's expression darkened. "Raleigh. That bastard's been terrorizing these parts for months. They're looking for me," Eliza continued, her eyes meeting his for the first time. "I saw their faces. I could identify them." "Well, they won't find you here," Nathan said firmly. "The North Star is 20 miles from the nearest town, and I don't get many visitors." "I can't stay," Eliza protested weakly. "I'd be putting you in danger." "Miss Kincaid, you can barely stand, let alone travel." Nathan's tone brooked no argument. "You're staying until you're healed at the very least. Now let me see to that arm." Too exhausted to fight, Eliza allowed him to tend to her wound. His hands were gentle, calloused from years of ranch work but surprisingly deft as he cleaned and bandaged the injury. "It's not as bad as it could be," he said when he finished. "The bullet just grazed you. You're lucky." "Lucky," Eliza repeated with a hollow laugh. "I don't feel lucky, Mr. Novak." "Nathan," he corrected. "And being alive when others aren't is its own kind of luck, Miss Kincaid." Harsh as that may sound, she couldn't argue with that logic. Instead, she asked, "Do you live here alone?" "Not entirely. There's my foreman, Hank, and 2 ranch hands, Tim and Joey. They live in the bunkhouse about a 1/4 mile from the main house. My housekeeper, Mrs. Gunderson, comes by 3 times a week, but she won't be here until tomorrow." "A big ranch for so few men," Eliza observed. Nathan's expression tightened slightly. "It used to be bigger. My father built this place from nothing. But cattle prices have been down, and after he passed last year." He trailed off, then shrugged. "We manage." "I'm sorry about your father," Eliza said softly. "Thank you." Nathan stood and gathered the medical supplies. "You should rest now. I'll bring you some food when you wake." But as he reached the door, Eliza called out, "Mr. Nathan." When he turned, she continued, "Why are you helping me? You don't know me. I could be lying about everything." Nathan studied her for a long moment. "Are you?" "No," she answered honestly. "I didn't think so." He smiled slightly. "As for why, my father always said the measure of a man is how he treats those who can offer him nothing in return." With that, he left, closing the door softly behind him. Eliza stared at the ceiling, her mind racing despite her exhaustion. Nathan Novak was unlike any man she had ever met. In her experience, men who offered help always wanted something in return. Yet there had been nothing but genuine concern in those green eyes. It was unsettling. She tried to stay awake to plan her next move, but her body had other ideas. Within minutes, she was asleep once more. Over the next few days, Eliza regained her strength. Her arm healed quickly, thanks to Nathan's careful attention and Mrs. Gunderson's herbal poultices. The housekeeper was a stout Norwegian woman with a no-nonsense manner and hands that never seemed to stop moving. She had taken one look at Eliza and declared, "Too thin. We fatten you up, yes." Despite her initial wariness, Eliza found herself relaxing in the peaceful routine of the ranch. Each morning, she woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of boots on the porch as Nathan and his men prepared for the day's work. By the 3rd day, she was well enough to join them for breakfast. "Miss Kincaid," Hank, the grizzled foreman, tipped his hat when she entered the kitchen. "Good to see you up and about." Tim and Joey, both barely out of their teens, stared at her with undisguised curiosity until Nathan shot them a warning look. "Miss Kincaid, would you care for some eggs?" Nathan asked, pulling out a chair for her. "Yes, thank you." Eliza sat down, suddenly self-conscious in the borrowed dress Mrs. Gunderson had altered for her. It was several years out of fashion, but clean and comfortable. "We're riding out to check the north pasture today," Nathan said as he served her. "The cattle have been restless lately." Might be wolves, or Raleigh's men, Hank muttered. An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. Eliza stared at her plate, her appetite suddenly gone. It's not likely to be Raleigh, Nathan said firmly. They haven't been seen this far west. More likely it's that pack we spotted last month. The men finished their breakfast quickly and headed out, leaving Eliza alone with Mrs. Gunderson, who was kneading dough with fierce concentration. You help, yes? The housekeeper asked. Good for hands, good for mind. Grateful for the distraction, Eliza spent the morning learning to make Mrs. Gunderson's famous sourdough bread. By noon, her arms ached from kneading, but 6 perfect loaves were cooling on the kitchen table, filling the house with their tantalizing aroma. Good hands, Mrs. Gunderson approved. You make good wife someday, Eliza blushed. I'm not sure that's in my future. Pa, young, pretty girl like you, of course. The housekeeper eyed her shrewdly. Maybe Mr. Nathan thinks so too, eh, Mrs. Gunderson? Eliza's blush deepened. It's not like that, he's just being kind. Kind, yes, but way he looks at you. Mrs. Gunderson winked. Not just kindness. Before Eliza could respond, the sound of hoofbeats outside announced the men's return. Nathan entered first, his face grim. Found tracks, he said without preamble. Not wolves, men. At least 6 of them making a circuit of the property line. Raleigh, Eliza whispered, fear clutching at her heart. Can't say for certain, but whoever it was, they weren't just passing through, they were looking for something. His eyes met hers, or someone. Eliza stood abruptly. I need to leave, now, I've put you all in danger long enough. And go where? Nathan countered. On foot, they'd run you down before you made it 5 miles. Then lend me a horse, I'll head for Helena, find the marshal there. The marshal in Helena is in Raleigh's pocket, Hank said grimly. Everyone knows it. Then what do you suggest? Eliza demanded, frustration making her voice sharp. We wait, Nathan said calmly. We don't know for certain it's Raleigh, and even if it is, they were just scouting, they didn't approach the house. Yet, Eliza added. Miss Kincaid, Eliza, Nathan stepped closer, his voice dropping. I promised you'd be safe here, and I meant it. This ranch has weathered worse than a gang of outlaws. We'll increase the watch, keep the men close to the house, and wait them out. Eliza wanted to argue, but the determined set of Nathan's jaw told her it would be futile. Instead, she nodded stiffly and retreated to her room, where she spent the afternoon staring out the window at the vast Montana landscape, feeling like a prisoner in a very beautiful jail. As evening approached, restlessness drove her outside. Nathan had asked her to stay close to the house, but surely the stable was safe enough. She slipped out the back door and made her way across the yard, breathing in the cool air with relief. The stable was quiet, most of the horses out in the pasture. Only Penny, Nathan's favorite mare, and the Palomino she had first seen remained in their stalls. Eliza approached the Palomino, admiring its gleaming coat. You're a beauty, aren't you? She murmured, reaching out to stroke its nose. Her name is Sunflower, came Nathan's voice from behind her. Eliza jumped, spinning around to find him leaning against the stable door, watching her with an unreadable expression. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I know you asked me to stay in the house, but I needed some air. Nathan shook his head. The stable is safe enough. He walked over to Penny's stall and began brushing the mare with long, methodical strokes. Besides, I could use the company. Eliza remained by Sunflower's stall, watching as Nathan worked. There was something soothing about the rhythmic movement of the brush, the quiet contentment of the horses, the earthy smells of the stable. You're good with them, she observed. Nathan smiled slightly. I've been around horses all my life. My mother used to say I could calm a wild Mustang with just my voice. Could you? Eliza asked, genuinely curious. Never tried with a truly wild one, but Penny here was considered unrideable when I got her. He patted the mare's flank affectionately. Took weeks of just talking to her, brushing her, letting her get used to me. Now she's the most reliable horse on the ranch. Eliza approached cautiously. May I? Nathan handed her the brush. Sure, she won't mind. Tentatively, Eliza began brushing Penny's chestnut coat. The mare flicked an ear but otherwise remained still. That's it, Nathan encouraged. Nice and easy, same direction as the hare. Eliza followed his instruction, finding unexpected pleasure in the simple task. I used to ride when I was younger, she confessed. My father had a small ranch near Virginia City, nothing like this place, but it was home. What happened? Nathan asked gently, Eliza's hand stilled. The war happened. My father and brother both fought for the Union. Only my father came home and he was changed. The ranch fell into debt. When he died 3 years ago, there was nothing left. I'm sorry, Nathan said. The war changed a lot of men, my father included. Was he a soldier? Nathan shook his head. No, but he lost both his brothers at Gettysburg. He was never the same after that. He took the brush back from Eliza and moved to Sunflower's stall. Is that why you were heading to Helena? Because of your father's death? Eliza hesitated, then nodded. I had been working as a teacher in Billings, but the school closed when the mine did. I heard Helena was booming, thought I might find work there. As a teacher, if I'm lucky. If not, well, I can cook clean, so, she smiled wryly. And now I can bake sourdough bread thanks to Mrs. Gunderson. Nathan returned her smile, continuing to brush Sunflower in long, even strokes. You're welcome to stay here as long as you need, you know, even after. He trailed off, but his meaning was clear. Even after the threat of Raleigh was gone, that's very kind, but I couldn't impose. It's not an imposition. Truth is, this place has felt too empty since my father died. It's nice having someone besides the hands and Mrs. Gunderson around. Eliza didn't know how to respond to that. Instead, she watched as he moved the brush over Sunflower's golden coat, his movements gentle yet confident. There was something intimate about the moment, standing in the dim light of the stable with this man she barely knew yet felt drawn to in a way she couldn't explain. Nathan, she began, then paused, uncertain what she wanted to say. He looked up, his eyes catching hers. Yes. Before she could continue, a shout came from outside. Boss, riders coming in fast. Nathan's expression hardened instantly. He thrust the brush into Eliza's hands and drew his gun. Stay here, keep quiet. But please, Eliza, just stay here. He was gone before she could argue, leaving her alone in the stable with only the horses for company. Sunflower nickered softly, nudging Eliza's shoulder as if sensing her distress. It's all right, girl, Eliza whispered, though her heart was pounding. She continued brushing the palomino, finding comfort in the repetitive motion as she strained to hear what was happening outside. Voices drifted in Nathan's, Hank's, and others she didn't recognize. The conversation seemed tense but not hostile. After what felt like an eternity, footsteps approached the stable. Eliza pressed herself against Sunflower's stall, her knuckles white around the brush handle. The door opened, revealing Nathan. It's all right, he said immediately, seeing her fear. It's just the Wilkerson brothers from the next ranch over. They came to warn us there's been another stagecoach robbery, this time just 10 miles from here. Raleigh? Eliza asked, her voice barely audible. Nathan nodded grimly. Sounds like it. 3 passengers killed, the driver and guard too. He crossed to her, gently taking the brush from her death grip. They're getting bolder, moving further west. Because of me, Eliza whispered, guilt washing over her. They're looking for me. You don't know that, Nathan countered, but his tone lacked conviction. I do. Eliza's voice grew stronger as she met his gaze directly. I have to leave, Nathan, tonight. I can't be responsible for bringing that kind of violence to your door. And I can't let you ride off to your death. Nathan's jaw set stubbornly. Raleigh doesn't know you're here. We've been careful, no trips to town, no visitors except the Wilkersons, and they don't know about you. But no, his voice softened. Eliza, please, trust me to protect you. The intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. For a moment they stood in silence, the air between them charged with something neither was ready to name. Finally, Eliza nodded. All right, but promise me this: if there's any sign they know I'm here, any danger to you or your men, you'll let me go. Nathan hesitated, then nodded. I promise. But it won't come to that. The sound of horses departing broke the moment. Nathan stepped back, clearing his throat. The Wilkersons are leaving. We should head back to the house before dark. As they walked across the yard, Eliza couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The vast Montana sky, painted in fiery oranges and reds by the setting sun, seemed to echo her sense of foreboding. Something was coming. She only hoped that when it did, she wouldn't be the cause of Nathan Novak's downfall. That night, Eliza dreamed of the stagecoach attack. In her dream, she wasn't thrown clear but remained trapped inside as Raleigh's men surrounded it. Their leader, a tall man with a face like carved granite and eyes as cold as a winter river, peered in at her through the window. "Nowhere to run, little lady," he said, his voice a rasping drawl that sent ice down her spine. "Nowhere to hide." She woke with a gasp, sweat dampening her nightgown despite the cool night air. For a moment she lay perfectly still, listening to the unfamiliar creaks and groans of the ranch house. Then a real sound, the soft tread of boots on the porch below her window. Heart pounding, Eliza slipped from the bed and crept to the window, carefully peering around the edge of the curtain. In the pale moonlight she could make out a figure standing guard, rifle in hand. It was Nathan, his profile sharp against the silver-washed landscape. Relief flooded her, followed by a surge of emotion she wasn't ready to examine. He had meant what he said about protecting her. Even in the dead of night, he was standing watch. As if sensing her gaze, Nathan turned toward the window. Eliza stepped back quickly, not wanting him to know she'd seen him. She returned to her bed, but sleep eluded her for the rest of the night. The next morning, dark circles under Nathan's eyes confirmed her suspicion that he had spent most of the night on guard duty. He said nothing about it, though, greeting her with the same quiet courtesy as always. "I thought we might ride out to check the cattle today," he said over breakfast. "You mentioned you used to ride. Might do you good to get out of the house for a while." Eliza hesitated. "Is it safe? We'll stay on ranch property, well away from the main roads, and I'll be with you the whole time." He smiled, the expression warming his tired face. "Besides, Sunflower could use the exercise. She's taken quite a liking to you." The prospect of freedom, even temporary, was too tempting to resist. "I'd like that," Eliza agreed. An hour later, they were riding across the rolling grasslands of the North Star Ranch. Nathan had insisted she wear trousers for the ride, a pair of his that Mrs. Gunderson had hastily altered. And though Eliza had initially balked at the impropriety, she had to admit they were far more practical than riding side saddle in a dress. Sunflower was as responsive as Nathan had promised, seeming to anticipate Eliza's commands before she gave them. The Palomino moved with fluid grace across the landscape, clearly enjoying the chance to stretch her legs. "She likes you," Nathan observed as they paused on a ridge overlooking a small valley where cattle grazed peacefully. "Sunflower's usually particular about who rides her." "She's wonderful," Eliza said, patting the horse's neck affectionately. "I'd forgotten how much I missed riding." Nathan was watching her with a strange expression. "You look different today, happier." Eliza realized he was right. Despite the danger hanging over her, despite the guilt she felt about imposing on Nathan's hospitality, in this moment she felt almost free. "I am happier," she admitted. "Being out here away from everything, it's like the world can't touch me." "That's how I feel about this land," Nathan said, his gaze sweeping over the vast expanse of his ranch. "My father used to say a man could lose himself out here or find himself, depends on what he's looking for." "And what are you looking for, Nathan Novak?" The question slipped out before Eliza could stop it. Nathan turned to her, his eyes serious. "I used to think I knew. Carry on my father's legacy, make the North Star the most successful ranch in the territory." He paused. "Now I'm not so sure that's enough." The intensity in his gaze made Eliza's heart beat faster. She looked away, suddenly flustered. "We should check on the cattle," she said, changing the subject. Nathan nodded, though a small smile played at his lips as if he understood her retreat. They rode down into the valley, weaving among the grazing longhorns. Nathan pointed out features of the landscape as they went, a hidden spring that never ran dry, even in the hottest summers. A stand of cottonwoods where wild horses sometimes sheltered, the distant mountain range that marked the western boundary of his land. As they headed back toward the ranch house, Nathan suddenly reined in his horse, his expression alert. "Hold up." Eliza stopped beside him. "What is it?" "Smoke." He pointed to a thin, dark plume rising from the direction of the ranch, too much for the chimney. Without another word, he spurred his horse into a gallop. Eliza followed, fear clutching at her throat. As they crested the final rise, the source of the smoke became clear. The bunkhouse was ablaze, flames leaping from its roof into the clear blue sky. Ranch hands were forming a bucket line from the well, but it was clear their efforts were futile. The wooden structure was already half consumed. Nathan leaped from his horse before it had fully stopped, racing toward Hank, who was directing the firefighting efforts. What happened? Nathan demanded. "Don't rightly know, boss," Hank replied, his face streaked with soot. "Tim was in town getting supplies. Joey and I were out checking the east fence line, came back to find it like this." "Anyone inside?" Hank shook his head. "Don't think so. Everything's gone, though." "All our gear, clothes, Joey's guitar." Nathan placed a hand on the older man's shoulder. "Gear can be replaced, you boys can't." Eliza had dismounted and approached more slowly, a sick feeling growing in her stomach as she surveyed the destruction. This was no accident. The timing was too convenient, the target too specific. "It was them, wasn't it?" she asked quietly when Nathan returned to her side. "Raleigh's men." Nathan's expression was grim. "Looks that way, a warning maybe, or a message," Eliza said. "They know I'm here." Nathan didn't deny it, which frightened her more than anything else could have. "Let's get back to the house," he said instead. "I need to get the men settled, figure out our next move." The ride back to the main house was tense and silent. Once there, Nathan quickly organized temporary sleeping arrangements for Hank, Joey, and Tim in the house's spare bedrooms. He sent Hank to town with a list of supplies they would need, with strict instructions to act normal and not mention the fire. "Could be they don't know for sure you're here," he explained to Eliza as they sat in the kitchen, drinking coffee that did nothing to dispel the chill that had settled over her. "Might just be trying to flush you out, see if you run. So what do we do?" Eliza asked, her hands wrapped tightly around her cup. "We wait," Nathan said. "Double the watch tonight. If they come, we'll be ready." "And if they don't," Nathan's expression softened, "then maybe they've moved on. Either way, we'll know more tomorrow." But they didn't have to wait until tomorrow. Just after sunset, as Nathan and his men were checking their weapons on the front porch, the sound of approaching horses broke the evening stillness. "Get inside," Nathan ordered Eliza, who had been helping Mrs. Gunderson prepare dinner. "Stay away from the windows." Eliza retreated to the kitchen, but remained near the door where she could hear what was happening outside. Mrs. Gunderson pressed a kitchen knife into her hand without a word, her lined face set in a fierce expression. "Even in, gentlemen," called a voice from the yard, falsely cheerful and touched with a southern drawl. "Mighty fine ranch you got here. Mind if we water our horses? Ranch is closed to visitors," came Nathan's reply, his tone deceptively calm. "Town's only 15 miles east if you're looking for hospitality." A chuckle drifted through the air. "Now, that ain't very neighborly, is it? Especially when we've come all this way just to pay you a visit." "State your business," Nathan said, all pretense of politeness gone. "Well now, I hear tell you might be harboring a fugitive." "Young lady, 'bout 20 or so, pretty little thing with auburn hair. Witnessed a stagecoach robbery, she did. We're just looking to have a word with her." Eliza's blood ran cold. "They were describing her exactly. No one here fitting that description," Nathan replied. "Just me, my hands, and my housekeeper, and we don't take kindly to uninvited guests." "That's so," the man's voice hardened. "Funny thing about lies, Mr. Novak, they have a way of catching fire." The implication was clear. They had burned the bunkhouse, and they would not hesitate to burn the main house as well. "You've delivered your message," Nathan said, his voice dangerous now. "I suggest you ride out while you still can." There was a long pause, then the sound of laughter. "Oh, we'll ride out, for now. But do pass along a message to Miss Kincaid when she shows herself. Mr. Raleigh says she's living on borrowed time, and so is anyone helping her." The sound of retreating hoofbeats followed, but no one in the house relaxed. Eliza stood frozen in the kitchen, the knife trembling in her hand. Nathan entered a few minutes later, his face like thunder. He stopped short when he saw her. "You heard?" Eliza nodded, unable to speak. "They won't be back tonight," he said, taking the knife gently from her grasp. "But they'll be watching the ranch, waiting for their chance." "I have to leave," Eliza whispered. "Tonight they'll burn your home, kill your men." "No," Nathan's voice was firm. Running is exactly what they expect, it's what they want. I won't be responsible for more deaths, Eliza insisted, finding her voice at last. Not yours, not anyone's. And I won't send you to your death, Nathan countered, his hands gripping her shoulders. Eliza, listen to me. Raleigh doesn't want you because you witnessed a robbery. That happens all the time out here. He wants you because of what else you saw. Eliza stared at him in confusion. What do you mean? Nathan sighed, releasing her to run a hand through his hair. The stagecoach you were on, was it carrying anything special? Mail, valuables? Eliza thought back to that terrible day. There was a banker from Helena on board. He had a lockbox. Said he was transporting bank documents. Bank documents, Nathan repeated, or something else entirely. Something Raleigh wants badly enough to hunt down the only witness who might know what it contained. Understanding dawned on Eliza. You think I saw something I wasn't supposed to see? I think Raleigh thinks you did, Nathan corrected, which means running won't solve anything. He'll hunt you to the ends of the earth if he believes you have information that could threaten him. But I don't, Eliza protested. I don't know anything about what was in that box. It doesn't matter. What matters is convincing Raleigh of that. Nathan's expression turned thoughtful, or using his belief against him. What are you suggesting? Eliza asked, wary of the determination in his eyes. A trap, Nathan said simply. We let Raleigh think you're running, draw him out, and end this once and for all. That's madness, Eliza breathed. Raleigh has at least a dozen men. You have 3, 4 including yourself. 5 including Mrs. Gunderson, Nathan said with a hint of a smile. And you'd be surprised how well that woman can shoot. Despite the gravity of the situation, Eliza found herself laughing, a slightly hysterical sound that quickly turned to tears. Nathan pulled her into his arms without hesitation, holding her as she sobbed against his chest. I'm so sorry, she whispered between breaths. I've brought nothing but trouble to your door. Hush, Nathan murmured, his hand stroking her hair. You've brought a lot more than trouble, Eliza Kincaid. She looked up at him then, her tear-stained face questioning. Nathan's expression softened, and for one breathless moment she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he gently wiped a tear from her cheek with his thumb. We should join the others, he said, his voice rough. Make our plans. Eliza nodded, stepping back from his embrace reluctantly. As they moved toward the dining room where Hank, Joey, and Tim were waiting, Nathan caught her hand, stopping her. I meant what I said, he told her quietly. We'll get through this, together. For the first time since the stagecoach attack, Eliza felt a flicker of hope. With Nathan beside her, perhaps there was a chance for a future after all. The plan they devised was both simple and dangerous. Eliza would appear to flee the ranch at dawn, drawing Raleigh's men away from the house. Nathan and his men would follow at a distance, using their knowledge of the terrain to outflank the outlaws and catch them in a crossfire. The canyon at Devil's Fork would be perfect, Hank suggested, pointing to a spot on the map Nathan had spread across the dining table. Narrow, high walls. Only one way in, one way out. Too obvious, Nathan countered. Raleigh's not stupid, he'd never follow her in there. He studied the map further, then tapped another location. Here, the meadow at Cottonwood Creek, open enough that they won't suspect an ambush, but with enough cover for us to hide. That's nearly 10 miles from the ranch, Tim pointed out. Long ride for Miss Kincaid on her own. She won't be on her own, Nathan said firmly. I'll ride with her just far enough behind that they won't spot me immediately. And leave us 3 against Raleigh's whole gang. Hank looked skeptical. 4, corrected Mrs. Gunderson from the doorway, a shotgun cradled in her arms with the ease of long familiarity. I not miss. Nathan nodded gratefully to the housekeeper. 4 against however many follow. The rest will likely stay with Raleigh, waiting to see if Eliza actually has what they're looking for. And what exactly am I supposed to be offering Raleigh? Eliza asked. I can't just ride out with no apparent purpose. Helena, Nathan decided after a moment's thought. You're making a run for the territorial capital, seeking protection from the governor himself. Raleigh has the local law in his pocket, but even he would hesitate to cross the governor. It's plausible, Hank agreed, and it gives them reason to want to catch her before she gets there. As the men continued refining the plan, Eliza found herself watching Nathan. His face was intent, focused, as he worked out every detail of their strategy. He was risking everything: his ranch, his men, his own life for her, a woman he had known for barely a week. When the meeting finally broke up, with everyone heading to get what rest they could before dawn, Eliza lingered. Nathan was still studying the map, making small notations with a pencil. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly when they were alone. "You could have turned me away that first day. Or handed me over to Raleigh when he came looking. Your ranch, your men, they would be safe." Nathan looked up, his expression serious. "My father taught me that a man who won't stand for what's right isn't much of a man at all." He straightened, coming around the table to stand before her. "But that's not the only reason." Eliza's heart quickened. "What's the other reason?" Instead of answering, Nathan raised a hand to her face, his fingers gentle as they traced the line of her jaw. "You know," he said quietly, and suddenly she did know. She saw it in his eyes, felt it in the way he touched her, as if she were something precious, something worth protecting at any cost. "Nathan," she whispered, his name a question and an answer all at once. He leaned down, and this time there was no interruption, no retreat. His lips met hers in a kiss that started gentle but quickly deepened, charged with all the emotions they had been holding back. Eliza's hands found their way to his shoulders, then his neck, drawing him closer as she responded with equal fervor. When they finally broke apart, both breathing heavily, Nathan rested his forehead against hers. "That," he said, his voice rough, "is the other reason." Eliza closed her eyes, savoring the moment even as fear for tomorrow threatened to overwhelm her. "I don't want you to die for me," she whispered. "I don't plan to," Nathan replied with a slight smile. "I plan to live a very long time, with you if you'll have me." The simple declaration, spoken so matter-of-factly, brought fresh tears to Eliza's eyes. "You barely know me." "I know enough," Nathan said. "I know you're brave and kind and stronger than you realize. I know that when I found you in my stable, something inside me recognized you, even before you spoke." His smile widened. "And I know that I've never felt this way about anyone before." Eliza wanted to protest that it was too soon, that they were caught up in the danger and excitement of the situation. But the truth was, she felt it too, that inexplicable connection, that sense of rightness when they were together. "If we survive tomorrow," she said instead, "ask me again." Nathan's eyes lit with determination. "We'll survive, and I will ask you again, every day if I have to, until you believe me." He kissed her once more, briefly but with no less passion, then stepped back. "Now get some rest. Dawn comes early and we have a long day ahead." Eliza nodded, though she doubted sleep would come easily. As she turned to go, Nathan caught her hand again. "One more thing," he said, his expression serious once more. "Whatever happens tomorrow, know that finding you in my stable was the best thing that ever happened to me." Eliza squeezed his hand, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Then she hurried to her room, where she spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, alternating between hope for the future and fear that dawn would bring an end to her newfound happiness before it had truly begun. Morning came too quickly. The eastern sky just beginning to lighten as Eliza dressed in the riding clothes. Mrs. Gunderson had prepared sturdy trousers, a warm shirt, and a jacket that had once belonged to Nathan's mother. The housekeeper helped her braid her hair tightly, then tucked it under a wide-brimmed hat. "You be careful," the older woman said gruffly, pressing a small knife into Eliza's boot. "Come back to him." Eliza hugged her impulsively. "I'll try." Downstairs, the men were making final preparations. Joey handed her a small pack with food and a canteen. Tim checked Sunflower's saddle one last time. Hank gave her a spare pistol, showing her how to use it with quick, efficient instructions, and then it was time. The sky was turning from gray to pale blue as Eliza mounted Sunflower in the ranch yard. Nathan stood beside her, his hand on her leg. "Ride for the meadow," he reminded her. "Don't look back. No matter what you hear, I'll be right behind you." Eliza nodded, her throat too tight for words. Nathan squeezed her leg once, then stepped back. With a nudge of her heels, Eliza urged Sunflower forward, through the ranch gate and onto the open trail that led east toward Helena. For the first mile, nothing happened. The only sounds were sunflowers' hoofbeats and the morning calls of birds awakening in the trees. Eliza began to wonder if their plan would work at all. Perhaps Raleigh's men had given up, moved on to easier prey. Then she heard the distant thunder of multiple horses, coming fast. She resisted the urge to look back, instead urging Sunflower to a faster pace. The Palomino responded immediately, stretching into a full gallop that ate up the ground beneath them. The pursuing riders gained steadily. Eliza could hear their shouts now, calling to each other as they spotted her ahead. She leaned lower over Sunflower's neck, willing the horse to even greater speed. A shot rang out, the bullet whizzing past her ear close enough that she felt its passage. Another followed, kicking up dirt to her right. Sunflower flinched but maintained her gallop, her ears pinned back in determination. The meadow at Cottonwood Creek came into view ahead, a wide expanse of grass dotted with the trees that gave it its name. Eliza headed straight for the center, exactly as planned. Behind her, the shouts grew louder, more triumphant, as her pursuers believed they had her cornered in the open space. She reached the middle of the meadow and reined Sunflower in sharply, turning to face her attackers at last. There were 5 of them, spread out in a loose line as they approached, their guns drawn. "End of the line, Miss Kincaid," called the leader, a man with a pockmarked face and cold eyes. "Mr. Raleigh wants a word with you." Eliza straightened in the saddle, forcing her voice to remain steady. "I have nothing to say to Raleigh." "Oh, I think you do." The man grinned unpleasantly. "Like where you hid those papers from the lockbox, so Nathan had been right. They thought she had taken something from the stagecoach." "I don't know what you're talking about," she said truthfully. "I was thrown from the coach before your men even opened it." The leader's grin faded. "You're lying. Raleigh saw you with the box." "Then Raleigh is mistaken," Eliza replied, her confidence growing. "They didn't have proof, only suspicion." "Doesn't matter whether you're lying or not," another man spoke up. "Raleigh wants you dead either way, can't have witnesses." They began to spread out, circling her like wolves around wounded prey. Eliza's hand moved to the pistol at her hip, though she knew she stood little chance against 5 experienced gunmen. "Now," came a shout from the trees to her left. Gunfire erupted from 3 directions at once. 2 of Raleigh's men fell immediately, taken completely by surprise. The others scrambled for cover, returning fire wildly as they tried to determine where the attack was coming from. Eliza took advantage of the confusion to urge Sunflower toward the cottonwoods, where Nathan's voice had come from. A bullet grazed the horse's flank, making her squeal in pain and veer sharply to the right. Eliza fought to regain control, but Sunflower was panicking now, bolting across the meadow toward the creek. "Eliza," Nathan's voice carried over the gunfire, desperate and afraid. She managed to glance back just in time to see him break cover, running toward her even as bullets kicked up dirt around his feet. Behind him, Hank and the others continued to pour fire into the remaining outlaws, keeping them pinned down. Sunflower hit the bank of the creek at full speed, her front hooves slipping on the muddy edge. Eliza felt herself being thrown forward as the horse reared in terror. She hit the ground hard, the impact driving the air from her lungs. For a moment she lay stunned, unable to move. Then rough hands were grabbing her, dragging her to her feet. The pockmarked leader had somehow reached her, his face twisted with rage and fear. "You're coming with me," he snarled, pressing his gun to her temple. "My ticket out of here." Eliza struggled, but his grip was like iron. He began backing toward the trees on the far side of the creek, using her as a shield. "Novak," he shouted, "I've got your woman. Throw down your weapons or I put a bullet in her brain." The gunfire ceased abruptly. Nathan appeared at the edge of the creek, his rifle pointed at the outlaw but unable to take the shot with Eliza in the way. "Let her go," Nathan called, his voice deadly calm. "Your men are dead or captured. There's nowhere to run." "I'll take my chances," the outlaw replied, continuing to back away. "Toss your rifle aside." Now, Nathan hesitated, his eyes locked with Eliza's. In that moment, something passed between them: understanding, resolve, trust. Almost imperceptibly, Eliza nodded. Nathan's rifle clattered to the ground. The outlaw relaxed slightly, his grip on Eliza loosening just a fraction. It was enough. Eliza's hand found the knife in her boot. In one swift motion, she pulled it free and drove it backward into her captor's thigh. He howled in pain, his gun discharging harmlessly into the air as he staggered back. Eliza wrenched herself free, diving to the ground as Nathan drew his pistol and fired in one fluid motion. The outlaw fell, clutching his chest, his eyes wide with surprise. He tried to raise his gun one last time, but a second shot from Nathan ensured he never would again. Then Nathan was at her side, gathering her into his arms, his hands moving frantically over her as if to assure himself she was unharmed. "Are you hurt? Eliza, talk to me." "I'm all right," she gasped, still trying to catch her breath. Just, winded relief washed over his face, followed quickly by anger. "What were you thinking? You could have been killed." "I was thinking I trust you," Eliza replied simply. "I knew you wouldn't miss." The anger drained from him as quickly as it had appeared. He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "Don't ever scare me like that again." "I'll try not to," she promised, holding him just as tightly. Hank's voice called from across the creek. "Boss, we got one alive. Says Raleigh's waiting at Thunder Ridge with the rest of the gang." Nathan helped Eliza to her feet, keeping one arm around her waist as they made their way back across the creek. 3 of the outlaws lay dead in the meadow. The 4th was sitting against a tree, his shoulder bleeding from a gunshot wound, while Tim kept a gun trained on him. Joey was tending to Sunflower, who appeared shaken but largely unharmed. "Thunder Ridge is at least a day's ride from here," Nathan said, frowning. "Why would Raleigh wait there?" "Probably meeting someone," Hank suggested, "or waiting for these boys to bring Miss Kincaid to him." "Either way, it gives us time," Nathan said. "Time to get word to the territorial marshal in Helena. Raleigh's gone too far this time, burning ranches, attacking innocent travelers. The governor won't stand for it, not with the railroad coming through next year." "What about him?" Tim nodded toward their prisoner. "He rides with us to Helena," Nathan decided. "His testimony should be enough to convince the marshal to send a proper posse after Raleigh." The ride back to the ranch was slow but triumphant. Mrs. Gunderson wept with relief when she saw them all return safely, then immediately set about tending to their various scrapes and bruises with her usual brisk efficiency. While Hank and Tim secured their prisoner in the root cellar and Joey saw to the horses, Nathan pulled Eliza aside to the quiet of the stable. "I thought I'd lost you today," he said without preamble, his hands framing her face as if she might disappear if he let go. "When I saw you fall." "But you didn't lose me," Eliza reminded him gently. "I'm right here." "Yes, you are," his thumbs traced her cheekbones softly, "and now I get to ask you that question again." Eliza's heart skipped a beat. "Nathan, Eliza Kincaid," he interrupted, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other a short time. But I also know with absolute certainty that I love you, that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you stay? Not just until Raleigh is caught, not just until spring. Will you stay forever, as my wife?" Tears blurred Eliza's vision, but they were tears of joy, not sorrow. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I'll stay." Nathan's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. He lifted her off her feet, spinning her in a circle as they both laughed with the pure, unfettered happiness of the moment. When he set her down, his kiss was tender, a promise of all the days to come. "We should go tell the others," Eliza said when they finally broke apart. "In a minute," Nathan replied, still holding her close. "First, there's something I want to show you." He led her to Sunflower's stall, where the palomino was contentedly munching on fresh hay, seemingly recovered from her ordeal. "I was saving her for someone special," Nathan said, stroking the horse's golden neck. "Someone who would appreciate her spirit, her heart. I think she was waiting for you all along." Eliza reached out to touch Sunflower's velvety nose. "She's magnificent. She's yours," Nathan said simply. "A wedding gift." Eliza turned to him in surprise. "Nathan, I can't accept. You can and you will," he insisted with a smile. "Besides, she's already chosen you. Horses have a way of knowing who they belong with." As if to confirm his words, Sunflower nudged Eliza's shoulder affectionately. Eliza laughed, stroking the horse's face with newfound confidence. "Thank you," she said softly, looking from the horse to the man beside her. "For everything." 2 weeks later, Eliza stood on the porch of the ranch house, watching as a cloud of dust on the horizon grew steadily larger. Nathan joined her, his hand finding hers automatically. "That'll be the marshal," he said, squinting against the afternoon sun. Their prisoner had indeed provided enough testimony to convince the territorial marshal to organize a proper posse. Word had come 3 days ago that Raleigh and most of his gang had been captured at Thunder Ridge, caught completely by surprise by the marshal's men approaching from 2 directions. The riders drew closer, and Eliza could make out 5 men in the group. 4 were clearly deputies, but the 5th, riding at the front, wore the distinctive badge of the territorial marshal's office. "Marshal Jenkins," Nathan greeted as the men dismounted in the yard. "Welcome to the North Star." Jenkins was a tall, weathered man with sharp eyes that missed nothing. He nodded to Nathan, then turned his attention to Eliza. "Miss Kincaid," he said, tipping his hat. "I understand we have you to thank for helping us finally catch Raleigh." "I only did what anyone would do," Eliza demurred. Jenkins snorted, "Not hardly. Most folks would have kept running, and who could blame them? Takes real courage to stand and fight." He reached into his saddlebag and withdrew a small package wrapped in oilcloth. "Found this among Raleigh's things. Thought you might want to see what all the fuss was about." Eliza accepted the package with trembling hands. Inside was a sheaf of papers, land deeds, by the look of them, and a map with certain areas marked in red. "Railroads coming through next year," Jenkins explained as Nathan looked over her shoulder at the documents. "These are survey maps showing the planned route, along with deeds to key properties along the way." Raleigh was buying up land cheap, planning to sell it at a premium once the railroad announced its official route. And the banker on the stagecoach was carrying these documents, Eliza realized. "Raleigh must have thought I took them when I escaped." "You being the only survivor and all," Jenkins confirmed. "Truth is, one of his own men double-crossed him, took the papers for himself. Raleigh caught up with him eventually, got the documents back, but by then he was convinced you'd seen enough to ruin his plans." "So all this, the attacks, the pursuit, was for a land scheme?" Nathan asked incredulously. Jenkins shrugged. "Money makes men do terrible things, Mr. Novak. Especially out here where the law is still flexible." He straightened, his expression becoming more formal. "Speaking of the law, I'll need both your testimonies for the trial. Raleigh's being held in Helena. Trial's set for next month." "We'll be there," Nathan promised, his arm tightening around Eliza's waist. Jenkins noticed the gesture, his weathered face softening into something approaching a smile. "Heard there might be congratulations in order." Eliza blushed as Nathan grinned proudly. "News travels fast," he said. "Small territory," Jenkins replied with a shrug. "Especially when Mrs. Gunderson is involved. That woman could give the Telegraph a run for its money." He tipped his hat again. "Well, I won't keep you. Just wanted to deliver the news in person, and the papers." After the marshal and his men had departed, Nathan and Eliza remained on the porch, watching as the dust cloud receded into the distance. "It's really over," Eliza said softly, leaning her head against Nathan's shoulder. "I can hardly believe it." "Believe it," Nathan replied, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Raleigh's going away for a long time. You're safe." "We're safe," Eliza corrected, turning to face him. "All of us." The all of us included not just Nathan and his men, but Mrs. Gunderson, who had decided to stay on permanently after the excitement of the past weeks, and even Reverend Phillips from town, who had agreed to perform their wedding ceremony in just 2 days' time. "You know," Nathan said thoughtfully, "if the railroad really is coming through as close as those maps show, the North Star could be well positioned to benefit. We could expand the herd, maybe even open a trading post." "Look at you, already planning for the future," Eliza teased, though her heart warmed at the way he naturally included her in his plans. "Our future," Nathan corrected, drawing her closer. "A future that looked mighty lonely before a certain schoolteacher came hiding in my stable." Eliza smiled at the memory that now seemed so distant. "I was terrified you were going to shoot me." I was terrified you were a rustler, Nathan admitted with a laugh. Then you looked up at me with those big brown eyes, and I was just terrified, period, of little old me. Eliza raised an eyebrow in mock disbelief. Absolutely. Nathan's expression grew serious. You don't know what you looked like that day, Eliza. Wild and fierce and so damn brave, even when you were scared out of your mind. I think I started falling for you right then and there. Even though I didn't say a word, Eliza asked softly. Nathan's fingers traced the line of her jaw tenderly. Sometimes the most important things don't need words. 2 days later, Eliza Kincaid became Eliza Novak in a simple ceremony on the front porch of the ranch house. Mrs. Gunderson wept openly, while Hank, Tim, and Joey stood awkwardly in their Sunday best, genuine happiness for their boss evident in their faces. Reverend Phillips spoke of new beginnings, of 2 lives joining to create something stronger than either could be alone. As Eliza repeated her vows, her eyes never left Nathan's, and she knew with absolute certainty that this was where she belonged. The small celebration afterward was filled with laughter, good food, courtesy of Mrs. Gunderson, and even music when Joey overcame his shyness to play his new guitar, a wedding gift from Nathan, to replace the one lost in the bunkhouse fire. As evening fell, the newlyweds slipped away from the festivities, walking hand in hand toward the stable where their story had begun. Sunflower greeted them with a soft nickering, and Penny stuck her head over her stall door as if sensing the special occasion. Happy. Nathan asked, pulling Eliza into his arms. More than I ever thought possible, she replied truthfully. When I was running from Raleigh, I never imagined I'd find a home, much less a husband. And I never imagined finding a wife hiding in my stable, Nathan countered with a grin. Life has a funny way of working out sometimes. He kissed her then, a kiss that held all the promise of their future together, the children they would have, the ranch they would build, the life they would share. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Eliza rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. You know, she mused, in all the excitement I never did thank her properly. Thank who? Nathan asked, puzzled. Eliza smiled, reaching out to stroke Sunflower's golden face. This beautiful girl. If she hadn't been here that day, keeping me company while I was too scared to speak, you might never have taken the time to coax me out of hiding. Nathan laughed softly. True enough. I've always had more patience with horses than people. He joined her in petting Sunflower. Guess we both owe her then. Guess we do, Eliza agreed. As they stood together in the quiet of the stable, surrounded by the gentle sounds of the horses settling for the night, Eliza felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. From terror to love, from silence to belonging, her journey had been unexpected in every way, but had led her exactly where she needed to be. She had been silent in the stable, afraid and alone. And a cowboy with gentle hands and a good heart had brushed the horse beside her until she found her voice. Now that voice would join with his for all the days to come, building a life together on the wild Montana plains. 10 years later, Eliza Novak stood on the front porch of the expanded ranch house, watching as 3 children played in the yard. 8-year-old James was attempting to teach his 6-year-old sister, Catherine, how to twirl a lasso, while little Emma, just 4, followed them around with determined steps, wanting to be included in everything her older siblings did. The North Star Ranch had prospered beyond anyone's expectations. The railroad had indeed come through just 5 miles from their property, bringing with it new opportunities. Nathan had expanded their cattle operation and opened a successful trading post near the tracks, while Eliza had started a small school for the children of neighboring ranches and the growing settlement that had sprung up around the railroad stop. Mama. Emma called, abandoning her siblings to run toward the porch. Is Papa home yet? Eliza scooped up her youngest, settling the child on her hip. Not yet, sweetheart, but he should be back before supper. Nathan had ridden to Helena on business. The 10th anniversary of Raleigh's capture had prompted a series of articles in newspapers across the territory. And a journalist had requested an interview with both Nathan and Eliza about their role in bringing down the notorious outlaw. Nathan had gone in her place, knowing Eliza still preferred to avoid publicity about those frightening days. "Can we ride out to meet him?" James asked, abandoning his lasso lesson to join his mother on the porch. "Please." "You just want an excuse to ride Thunder," Eliza teased, referring to the spirited colt Nathan had been training for their son. James grinned, not denying it. "I could take Kathy on Sunflower. You know how gentle she is with the children." At the mention of her beloved Palomino, now in her golden years but still strong and sweet-tempered, Eliza smiled. "Very well, but only to the ridge, understand, no further without me," the children cheered, rushing to prepare for their adventure. Catherine ran to find her riding boots, while James headed for the stable to saddle the horses. Emma wriggled to be put down, insisting she needed her hat just like Papa's if they were going riding. As Eliza helped her youngest daughter find her miniature Stetson, a gift from Nathan on her last birthday, she caught sight of herself in the hallway mirror. At 32, her face showed the subtle signs of a decade spent under the Montana sun, fine lines around her eyes, a sprinkling of freckles across her nose. But her eyes were bright with contentment, and the fear that had once shadowed them was long gone. Mrs. Novak called Mrs. Gunderson from the kitchen. The housekeeper had remained with them all these years, becoming more like family than employee. "The children ride out, yes. I packed some biscuits for the journey." "Just to the ridge," Eliza confirmed, smiling at the older woman's perpetual concern that none of them ever had enough to eat. "We'll be back well before dark." Half an hour later, Eliza rode at the head of their small procession, Emma seated securely in front of her on Penny's granddaughter, a gentle bay mare named Copper. James rode proudly on Thunder, sitting tall in the saddle just like his father had taught him, while Catherine perched on aging Sunflower, who still moved with surprising grace despite her years. They reached the ridge that overlooked the eastern approach to the ranch and dismounted, tethering the horses to a stand of cottonwoods. The children spread out the blanket Mrs. Gunderson had packed along with enough food for a small army, while Eliza scanned the horizon for signs of Nathan's return. "Tell us the story again, Mama," Catherine requested as they settled on the blanket, "about how you and Papa met." Eliza smiled, having told this particular story so many times it had become a family legend. "Well, it was a warm day in early summer, much like today." As she recounted the tale carefully edited for young ears to omit the more frightening aspects, Eliza watched her children's faces. They never tired of hearing how their mother had hidden in their father's stable, too frightened to speak, and how he had gentled her fears just as he would a spooked horse. "And Papa says he knew right away you were special," James added, having heard Nathan's version of the story as well. "He says you had the prettiest eyes he'd ever seen, even when you were scared." "Is that what he says?" Eliza asked, touched that Nathan still spoke of their first meeting with such tenderness. "He says you're still the prettiest lady in all of Montana territory," Catherine confirmed solemnly. "Even prettier than Miss Lily at the general store, and she has real store-bought perfume," Eliza laughed. "Well, that is high praise indeed. Look," Emma suddenly shouted, pointing, "it's Papa." Sure enough, a lone rider had appeared on the eastern trail, his familiar silhouette unmistakable even at a distance. The children jumped to their feet, waving and calling out, their excited voices carrying across the open space. Nathan spotted them and raised his hat in greeting, urging his horse to a faster pace. Within minutes, he had reached them, dismounting in one fluid motion that still made Eliza's heart skip a beat, even after all these years. "Well, what's this?" he asked, grinning as the children tackled him with hugs. "A welcoming committee. We wanted to surprise you," Catherine explained, beaming up at her father. "And you did," Nathan assured her, lifting Emma into his arms as she demanded her share of attention. "Best surprise I could ask for." His eyes met Eliza's over the children's heads, and the love she saw there made her breath catch, just as it had that day in the stable when he had first looked at her with something more than concern. "How was Helena?" she asked as they repacked the picnic and prepared to head back to the ranch. Nathan shrugged. Same as always, too many people, too much noise. He lowered his voice so the children couldn't hear. The journalist wanted more details than I was comfortable sharing. I told him the basic facts, nothing more. Eliza squeezed his hand gratefully. Thank you. There was one good thing, though, Nathan added as he helped James secure the picnic basket to Thunder's saddle. I ran into Marshal Jenkins well, Judge Jenkins now. He's retiring next month, moving to California for his health. After all he did to bring law and order to the territory, he deserves a peaceful retirement, Eliza said. Nathan nodded. He asked after you, sent his regards, said he always remembered how brave you were facing down Raleigh's men. I wasn't brave, Eliza demurred, as she always did when the subject arose. I was terrified. Being scared doesn't mean you weren't brave, Nathan said, his hand finding the small of her back as they walked toward their horses. Courage isn't about not feeling fear, it's about facing it anyway. Eliza leaned into his touch, grateful as always for his understanding. I suppose you're right. Of course I am, Nathan replied with a teasing grin. I'm always right, isn't that what you tell the children? I most certainly do not, Eliza protested, laughing. In fact, I distinctly recall telling them just yesterday about how wrong you were about that shortcut to town that added an extra hour to our journey. One mistake in 10 years of marriage, Nathan said with mock indignation. I'll never live it down. As they bantered, they helped the children mount their horses. Nathan insisted on taking Emma with him for the ride home, settling her securely in front of him on his saddle. With the children situated, he turned to offer Eliza a hand up onto Copper. Their eyes met as he helped her mount, and for a moment they were back in that stable 10 years ago, she, terrified and silent, he patient and gentle, brushing Penny's coat as he spoke in low, reassuring tones. I love you, Mrs. Novak, Nathan said softly, his hand lingering on hers. And I love you, Mr. Novak, Eliza replied, her voice strong and clear, no longer silenced by fear. As they rode back to the ranch together, the setting sun painting the Montana sky in shades of gold and crimson, Eliza felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over her. For the stable that had provided refuge when she needed it most. For the cowboy who had brushed the horse beside her until she found her voice. And for the beautiful life they had built together, one day at a time, on the wild frontier of their hearts.